Rappin with ReefBum is sponsored by Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine.
Hey, what's happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rappin with ReefBum. I'm your host, Keith Berkelhamer. So on today's live stream, I welcome Josh Saul from Manhattan Reefs, Reefs.com, and Advanced Aquarist. What's up there, Josh?
Hey, how's it going, Keith? Good to see you,
Good to see you too, man. So Josh is a consultant for tech startups, right? Technology consultant for tech startups. He has been involved in the aquarium hobby for 25 years and has been scuba diving even longer, for more than 30 years. He is also the owner and president of Manhattan Reefs, which was founded in 2000, and he founded Reefs Magazine in 2008 and 2019. He acquired the Advanced Aquarist and Reefs.org. But before we start chatting with Josh, I want to thank the sponsors for this show, both Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine. Really appreciate those companies supporting the stream, as well as you folks out there. I see there's a bunch of familiar folks out there tuning in. Appreciate the support. Spread the word, and don't forget to hit that like button. Right, Paul? Our moderator, Great Bearded Reef, was always reminding folks to hit that like button so more people can find it. So let's go ahead and do that. And as always, I encourage everybody to drop comments and ask questions in the chat. So, Josh, man, we first met, I don't exactly know when it was, but we met at a Manhattan Reefs frag swap. I can't remember when. You know, as I mentioned, you're the owner and president of Manhattan Reefs. Were you also the founder or no?
I was a founder, yeah. I mean, you say president, it's like we have some sort of org structure, but it's always been, you know, very laid back sort of community. We don't have like, you know, titles or anything like that. It's really just more of like a website that happens to have a really cool event in New York. And no, I definitely remember, I don't remember exactly meeting you, but always like carried this kind of reputation as the SPS guy from up in
West
Connecticut.
Connecticut, yeah. Well, yeah, Westchester. Yeah. So, I was in Westchester, and then I moved to Connecticut.
Yeah, so I knew that, you know, everyone, before our swaps, everyone always like reserves things, and you would go in there and drop, you know, like 10 photos, and it would just be like, just those killer, like, classic SPS, and very bright colors. So I'd always jump all over everything you always had. So
Nothing's really changed, Josh. I still like the classics, and I'm still into like the brightly colored SPS. For me,
that stuff.
yeah, for me, it's kind of like things that catch the eye and solid colors. I mean, the Oregon Blue Tort. I don't think you get any better in terms of like classic, just striking blue color. And
Banana.
Yeah, and even like stylophores, like give me like a big solid pink or purple stylo.
Red. Yeah, those are beautiful.
Yeah, or a Green Valley Slimer. I just, I'm still kind of like drawn to all that stuff.
Yeah.
But things have changed a lot since then, that's for sure.
Oh my God. I go to these shows and it's like, my mind is just blown. You think back to, kind of 2000 era, and things did not look anything like this. It's like, what ocean are they getting these things out of these days? Like, have we not discovered all of the amazing, like, beautiful, limited edition SPS corals yet? It seems we haven't. There's still, every time I go to a show, there's something out there that there's a frag that's like $1,000, and it looks incredible. But like I do like, the Beatles and Led Zeppelin. It's like, just give me the classics.
So, let's talk more about Manhattan Reefs. I had Randy Donowitz on, and Randy is also a big part of Manhattan Reefs and Reefs.com. And we talked a lot about it. But how did you become involved? I mean, had you been reef keeping before you started Manhattan Reefs, or was that kind of something that you started to get into reef keeping? And you were like, I'm in New York, and I'd like to meet like-minded folks. I mean, how did that all come about for you?
Yeah, it was that exactly. I mean, really, I got into the hobby because, I learned to scuba dive at an early age. And for people that don't dive, once you go down and you see these corals and this like other world, it's like, you seeing some interplanetary like experience. It's really profound. And then once you've done that, if you walk into any sort of pet store or aquarium store, like you just go straight past the lizards and the turtles and everything, and you just look for that kind of bright blue light. And these animals, you think that they're plants at the time, but you're just kind of drawn to it. So, when I first moved up to Manhattan around 1999, about a year and a half after school, I wanted to get something interesting, to kind of entertain my friends and, to attract girls and stuff like that. And obviously I like, I'm into music, so I like the purple, the blue light and all that. So I went out to an aquarium store just kind of started asking lots of questions. Eventually picked up a 34-gallon tank. And that was it. It's like, that was the starting point. And in Manhattan, there were just not a lot of stores.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of stores.
At the time, there were two that I can recall. And one of them was down on 8th Street.
I remember that store in the Village.
World Aquarium.
Yeah.
Owned by Suresh, right? And Suresh had that crazy octopus that used to like attack people. But we go in there and just like, I'm like, I gotta get into this hobby. And it's very expensive. And so I ended up like buying all the stuff way out on, Bushwick, where things were a little bit cheaper. But the only place to get livestock was down there. And then somehow I searching on the internet and found Reefs.org and Reef Central. Obviously, those were the two big places to go at the time. And I started like finding people that were selling frags and trading frags in New York City and the surrounding areas. And we just, we're like a common breed. Like for the fact that we are carrying around bags of hot salt water around the city and just doing like weird sort of things, going like to buy like crazy amounts of plumbing at odd hours. Mm-hmm. It's kindred spirits, right? So eventually I kind of fell in with this group of people, and it was myself and Jim Curry and a few other people. And we decided to have like a get together. And the first get together was at or I should technically call this a swap. The first get together was at a bar down by Jim's school by Pace. We went down there, and then from there it was like, okay, we went to all these different bars. Then we realized we were just getting too big for bars, and we did it in this apartment, which is actually pretty small. And I remember we bought 50 Rhycordia Yumas. We all like chipped in on the Yumas, and then everybody showed up with a whole bunch of frags, We just had like, we'd order pizza and beer and stuff like that. And then we moved to Jonathan Hale's apartment in the West Village. And Jonathan had this big, 130-gallon SPS tank. And like the crowd was getting to, like 50 some odd people. I should say around this time, I'm a tech person. So I just kind of like put up this website called ManhattanReefs.com. And I told all the people like, hey, let's just chat there instead of Reef Central and everything. And this just like, it had a life of its own. It just took off. And we started to like have 50 people at these events, and it just got really crowded. We started to go out to, we did it in the back of a store out in Brooklyn. This guy named Sean had this store. We would do it in Brooklyn. And at that time, we like in the back of the shop, like we would have a keg. So it was just really like kind of a group and like family event. And I remember there was a holiday party at Sean's place one time, and this guy came up to me and he's like, I'm Randy. And I'm like, oh yeah, we were talking. We had been talking about some articles that had been published or something. And he's like, yeah, I got my tank like right down the street at Pratt. You want to come take a look? And I had heard that he had just like this beautiful tank. So I hopped in his car and we drove over and I took a look at it. And he had like, 3 tanks at the time. It's just incredible that this was not just in someone's apartment, but was actually like in
I'm showing the picture of Randy. The only picture I have of Randy on the bottle.
Okay. And yeah, it was just like, I don't know, Randy and I, we're like best friends. So that was a kind of chance encounter. And Randy had this space at Pratt. I think the first 2 times we did it in his office, which if you've ever been there, it's the writing center and all the tanks are there, which is really cool. But it's not like the biggest place. And you couldn't have vendors. Like we didn't have vendors.
Right.
And so then eventually we realized, hey, there's this student union, like this kind of student center downstairs that they have like parties and things. So we decided we're going to approach the administration about it. And Randy did all the work and reached out. And, it's a little bit nerve wracking. You think Randy is like, an employee of the school. And he's going into the administration office and saying, I want to have like 200 people come in and they're all going to be bringing like tanks of water and we're going to plug in all this electricity and then we're going to like charge money. And I'm sure they looked at him like he was nuts at first. But he did a lot of the legwork and, I helped out. I got to say, my hats off to Randy for getting that started. And we had a great event. And we were using that space for, I don't even know how many years. And we were doing 2 events. We were doing that event, and then we also figured out we could do the same thing down at Pace. So we had a spring and a fall. Unlike a lot of other clubs, we did 2 swaps, which is good and bad. Like it was bad in that it was a lot of work, but it was good in that you kind of get a rhythm. You get good at it.
Yeah.
And we had done it in those places so many times. We just developed this pattern, and we were all friends, and we weren't like, it wasn't like this big organized thing. We were just like, we're just having a good time. So this community in New York, there aren't a lot of shops, but there are a lot of people that are in these apartments and they want something that looks really cool. So they end up with an aquarium. And when you find these people, you just kind of coalesce, which is profound for me.
Pretty cool. Corey Page, thank you so much for that super chat. So, Josh, all right. So you mentioned that, it kind of morphed into having 2 swaps per year. But when COVID hit, right, the swaps stopped. Any insight in terms of when you guys might start those up? Because I'm really chomping at the bit here. I would love to do
my God. You have no idea. I mean, there was a time where we didn't do a swap. We skipped the swap, and people were just going bonkers. And then COVID, and you can imagine, colleges and certainly, colleges where it's not really like their business to have a frag swap in their student union. Admittedly, it's an art school. So there is some crossover there, and everybody knows when you're walking around Pratt where the aquariums are. So if somebody needs to go to the writing center, they're like, where's the writing center? Oh, it's where the aquariums are. And they know how to get there. So I think it has become a part of the fiber of the school. But the truth is that, these universities, they're trying to figure out, well, does everyone have to be vaccinated? Does everyone have to be tested? And I think until just recently, people have not been comfortable with any sort of like group event. Now, the problem is that we could start planning something and we would like to do something in the fall, and we are indeed working to like try and secure a space in the fall. I'm like looking for Randy to like holler in the chat, but we would like to do that. But it comes down to
I'm showing that picture of Randy again.
Oh, the
bottle.
The bottle. So there's a funny story about that. If I can tell it.
Yeah. No, go tell it, and then we'll get back to the swap.
We had this kind of like small group after later on, like in the several years after Manhattan Reefs was founded. Like I found Randy, and then Randy was friends with Sanjay, and then Joe Iaulo and Joe Cap and Christine, everyone. And anyhow, we had this like summer get together, which at the time was called San Joe. Which was basically Sanjay and Joe Iaulo. So these guys get together, and it just turns into this like explosive sort of experience. And we had this San Joe, and we did it a couple places. And then I have this kind of family house in Atlantic City, the island, and so we did it there. And I went down there, and I bought we bought a bunch of alcohol, and I get down there. Sanjay shows up, and Sanjay likes to drink rum, and I like to drink rum. And I bought this random Venezuelan rum, which looked nice. And Sanjay and I, we drank it in it was like less than 2 hours. We drank this whole bottle, just the two of us. And we were like, this has got to be like 20 proof, like something really low. And we go and look, and it's like legitimately like an 80 proof rum. And we were just like, this is
surprising, like, Josh, you remembering the story.
This is the most, yeah, that's true. It's the most fabulous tasting rum. Like, you don't mix it with Coke or anything like that. We just a piece of ice. So we were drinking this bottle, and we were having such a good time. We're taking a lot of photos in my family house, this summer house, and we're holding up this bottle. And on the front of this bottle, as I think you've shown a couple of times, is a picture of this guy. So we posted pictures on Facebook, and Facebook is pretty smart about like facial recognition. So we're holding this thing up, and it says, "That's Josh Saul, that's Sanjay Yoshi," and it tags the bottle and says that's Randy Donowitz. So it thinks that I think you're showing the picture with actually Randy on the bottle. Yeah. But if you've seen the bottle, it's not Randy at all. It's just Facebook seems to think that dude, that Venezuelan rum producer, is Randy. So then Randy, he works with all these art students. We went to Mac then. Now this is like the rum of choice. So we're always bringing a couple bottles with us. And one of his art students printed out these labels for it.
Awesome.
It says instead of Diplomatico, it says Donowitzico Reefa Reserva. So we have these labels. Whenever we show up at this thing, we put the labels on the bottle. It's kind of a tradition.
All right, here's another funny picture. This looks like Rich Ross and Sanjay. And it says, "I got Sanjay." And then Sanjay's holding up on the real Rich Ross. What's the story behind that one?
Well, there was that kind of period where there were those photo booths at all the different events, and we were like the first to because we had done one at I had a surprise birthday party where all these guys, obviously all my friends were there, including all the people we're talking about. And so we got one of these booths for MACNA, and we, instead of just having the pirate's hat and like the fish and everything, we got all the little things that say, "I'm the real Rich Ross," or like, "I got Sanjay," and all the inside industry kind of humor. And oh my God, we've got like thousands of photos of
See, now I get this, that Sanjay's wearing the octopus on his head, just like Rich.
He's Ross. He's got Ross.
Yeah. All right, man. So let's get back to the swaps and all that stuff. So yeah, obviously COVID and what have you put a wrench in the plans. But I think the other reality of the situation, and this is not probably just an issue for Manhattan Reefs, is finding a space, right, that can be affordable space, that is also a space that people can get to and park and all that sort of thing. What kind of challenges have you guys had, and do you foresee that being, more challenges in the future to put these events on?
Yeah, I mean that's really the hardest thing in New York. If you try and get one of these spaces, the last time I looked, it was like $8,000 a day.
Wow.
And because it's not it's not like a sneaker convention where everybody shows up with boxes of sneakers at a table. People need to set up the night before, so you're blocking out Saturday and Sunday in order to do a one-day event. And that means, okay, now my sunk cost just to put on the show is $16,000, and maybe I've got 200 to 300 people showing up. and we didn't want to charge people like $50 to get in. Like that was never like we wanted to like originally it was $5, and then eventually I think we started charging a little bit more. So we never wanted to do that. And I have looked at all of the event spaces in Manhattan. And, you know, it's Manhattan. Like there's art shows, exhibits competing with us, fashion, everything under the sun is trying to find a space in Manhattan. So you have to find things that are kind of friendly to what you're doing and a space where somebody wouldn't really use that for anything else. Like no one's going to run like, you know, a fashion show in the Pratt Student Union. Although Randy's probably screaming right now that like, no, they actually have like a student like fashion thing that they run there a couple times. But my point remains, it's really, really hard to do it. So it makes sense that the big shows are in New Jersey. I mean, I know they say New York, but everyone that hasn't been there, it's on the other side of the river. It's in New Jersey. It's at a real convention center, good parking, good hotel. That's the other thing. We were saying, all right, if we were going to have people come from out of town and we have to, you know, people want to stay at a hotel, there are no hotels in Manhattan that are under $200, you know, a night. We were trying to figure out if we could ever do a MACNA here. And at the time, we talked to the, you know, the MASNA board, and it was sort of like, well, you need to find a place where people can pay, at the time, $150 a night. It's like instantly like, well, okay. It's
That's
just
not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. So the good thing is that, you know, we don't need it to be fancy. Like we're okay with industrial space. I'm always looking for new spaces. Admittedly, COVID has put a damper on searching for new spaces. We haven't done anything in Pace in a long time because, you know, again, this is kind of a, you know, our group, Jim worked there. Jim was administrator. Jim made the administration trust us enough to, you know, to like give us a space for the day. I mean, we still have to pay for it, but it's more of a trust sort of thing. So, and we like doing it with the educational backing because then that makes it more than just like, hey, we're just charging money and everybody comes in and buys frags and then they get out. It's like, no, actually, this is affiliated with some sort of learning institution, and it feels more valid to me to like why I want to put on the event. So we're always looking. Hopefully, we're gonna turn the corner on COVID. I think we're trending in the right direction. Well, I think we're actually trending in the wrong direction, but like over a longer period of time, people are more like they understand how to mitigate their own risk, and they know, you know, more people are certainly vaccinated. So I think we're getting close to doing something. I mean, I'm just, you know, not just going crazy myself because I can't do it, but everybody asking me, and Randy even more so. Everybody asks. I just say, they ask me, when's the next swap? And I say, ask Randy, which must drive him crazy.
So Reef Under the Roof is asking, how hard is it to keep a reef club going? So obviously swaps are just one part of it, but yeah, how hard is it, Josh? Has it been harder, the hardest it's ever been for you?
It's really, really hard, especially without events. I mean, the one thing to understand is that, you know, we're not really, at least for us, for Manhattan Reefs, it's not really a club. It's more like we're on New York City or the tri-state area, and it's a website just to facilitate community. We don't have regular meetings. We don't have an e-board. We don't have anything like that. That's just like, it's almost not necessary. We're just known for, we run these swaps, we run some group buys. We have like these weird events. Like we had like this event which I ran a few times where everybody needs glue. So I just buy glue in bulk and we just show up at a restaurant and then all these people are coming in like stocking up on glue, which blew the, you know, the minds of the restaurant owners. Like they thought we were dealing drugs. Seriously, like they were coming in. All these guys were just showing up, getting these little boxes and running out the door. They thought we were like snorting the glue. But we like to run things that are a little off the wall. Like the one thing that I always try to focus on is in this hobby is just don't take yourself too seriously, right? This is supposed to be relaxing. It's supposed to, you know, fill some kind of time or void in your life, and you just need to enjoy it. So if we're doing like a ton of work to maintain the thing, it seems to eventually you run into issues. You run into personality issues and drama and politics, and I don't like any of that sort of stuff. To go back to the question, if you have a community that is solely based online, then it's challenging, but it's not impossible.
Have you guys given thought to, you talked about, education and all that stuff at swaps and having guest speakers, and you guys have some kick-ass guest speakers. I mean, some top-notch speakers. Given the Zoom thing that's been going on with the pandemic and how easy it's been for people to connect, virtually, have you guys thought about maybe doing like maybe once a quarter or once a month or something like that, a speaker type of deal?
We have. I think that we're probably a little late to that. But just trying to like focus on the DNA of like why people are still like really excited and passionate about Manhattan Reefs 20 plus years later. It's because of that community. Like when when you go to the swap, like you may not know everybody's names, but it really feels like a family sort of thing. Like just people there with their significant others, with their kids. We always try and have like some entertainment for other people that are there. And, you make all these kind of advanced trades or sales, and you show up with your cooler, and you're just kind of there for the day. And yeah, you're looking for stuff, but you're just meeting people. Like we have swaps where people show up at the swap and they're like, I'm not even in the hobby anymore, but I have a whole bunch of friends here, so I figured I'd come and hang out. So it's a little bit different. And I think that people that have done like the more traditional aquarium clubs and events and meetings and speakers, they've always like shown up at our swaps and been like, this is definitely different. And I hope that it's not just us. I mean, I it'd be cool if like, hey, we're the only people that have this kind of thing. But at the same time, I hope that more clubs have a real community. You just like show up because your friends are there.
Paul, great beer to read. Thank you so much, man, for the super chat comments. Always appreciate a good stream. Thanks, Keith and Josh. Couldn't agree more on the family and community aspect. Yeah, I mean, that's my recollection, Josh. Just when I first started going to Manhattan Reefs Frag swaps, it seemed like there was a lot of swapping going on. There weren't like a lot of vendors at those first swaps. At least I don't remember. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there were a decent amount of vendors. But I think that was like the cool thing. I met Kenny Lynn at a at a swap before he went pro, and he used to
join the big leagues.
Yeah, he had some sweet stuff. So I think we might have swapped stuff, but that's the great thing. That's the thing I loved about the hobby back then. Before all the online stuff, is you kind of get caught up in all the social media and the virtual aspect of it. But I do think it's very important that folks can attend some sort of swap, trade show, event in person. That it's invaluable in terms of making those connections, meeting like-minded folks, and talking to manufacturers and talking to the coral vendors and seeing things like up close and personal. It's a pretty cool thing.
Absolutely.
So all right, so in the intro I mentioned you not only are the owner of Manhattan Reefs, but you also own Reefs Magazine. So what was the emphasis in terms of why you wanted to start the impetus in terms of why you wanted to start Reefs Magazine?
Well, we were actually producing content. Like we had people that were writing like kind of really long posts in our forums and threads and whatnot. And Jonathan Hale, who's like kind of a, he's a hobbyist obviously, but a photographer and an artist, and he's just like jack of all things, kind of cool. He's got a really good eye for stuff. Yep. And he just said, well, there's no like cool, like, there's Coral Magazine at the time, but there was nothing that was online that was just like really just sharp looking. Didn't look like just a fabulous magazine. So he started working on it before me. And he just showed up at my apartment one time with him and this guy named Don, and they just like laid out these pieces of paper, and they were like, we want to do this thing called Reefs Magazine, and we want you to support it and all that. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like, this is kind of what we were doing already, but you just took this, really professional approach to it, like really high quality photos and content. So he started working on it, and he did, a few issues, and, other things came up in his life as they do, and done happen for me many times. And I sort of took on like ownership or leadership of it for a while. I mean, it was still running on our servers the whole time. And then, Randy kind of got into the picture, and Randy has a good background at being, running the writing center. And Randy has like a degree in Sanskrit, which, apparently it becomes valuable at some point in the future or something like that. making jokes about Randy. But anyhow, so Randy is the senior editor of Reefs Magazine, and he worked with a couple of his students and his administrators. I should mention Brian Cook for sure. There are others that I'm not mentioning, but they really built this thing up. And you know, Randy would say, "Okay, we want to do this article. We need like budget and everything," and he would, you know, he would go and get the right people, get the right content, create it, and then myself and Brian would work on the visual aspects. And we just did this for many years. And again, it sort of took on a life of its own. And we started having like, we'd go to MACNA and have like the Reefs Magazine thing and like a party. And it would be part of, you know, we would have a booth there at the time. And again, just took on a life of its own. Never really with the goal of making a lot of money. It was always just like, just make enough money so we can pay the authors. And, you know, we just did this thing for fun. So it's another one of those stories where it's kind of serendipity.
So, all right. And then at some point later, you ended up buying Advanced Aquarist magazine, right?
Yeah. So somewhere in there, I started Reefs.com, which
right.
was
Okay.
just
Right.
kind of like,
Reefs.com.
okay, we like had all this content. We had a great forum. We had a magazine. We were kind of like writing some bloggy stuff. So we started this website, Reefs.com, and we had the magazine, Reefs Magazine, the forum, and all that. And then just to answer your question, you know, we became friends with all the other people in the industry, and we just had like kind of a very similar sort of approach to what we were doing as the guys at Advanced Aquarist. Shane, Len, Wade, and obviously Terry. You know, it wasn't, they all had day jobs, and it was really just more of a hobby thing. They just wanted to put out good content. So we were always hanging out with them and talking to them and trying to like kind of, you know, have some synergy between us and them. And they also, you know, Advanced Aquarist was started by Terry, and they also owned Reefs.org, which was another big online community a long time ago. And they decided that, you know, they weren't really in it anymore. So we, instead of letting them just kind of like, you know, hopefully not shut it off and like lose all that content, lose all the community, lose the everything that they had made, we decided to buy the content, buy the trademarks and the website and the brand name and everything, and then import all of that into our platform. So that took a lot of time, consumed me for a great amount of time, but I think we were able to really preserve something that was, I mean, I think it's really valuable. I mean, I know from search engine optimization that there are a lot of people that are searching for this content. So we made it indexable. We made it, you know, we freshened it up a little bit, made it look a little fancier. So now we have this kind of Advanced Aquarist brand. And if you think about like the things that we're trying to do on the website, one is just educate the beginner, you know, reefer. But then there's also this other level that people operate on where they know all of the technology, all of the chemistry, all of the physics, all that stuff. And there are people that like to write about this, you know, like Sanjay gets a new light and he'll go and like run a million tests on it and get the par meter, and like he's got this like testing lab in his basement. So there's an audience for these really advanced topics, and that moniker, Advanced Aquarist, is like the kind of top level of technical and kind of scientific analysis in the hobby. That's what we try to maintain.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, you know, in terms of like having these sources of information that are legit, that are driven by, you know, people in the industry that are experts in certain things that they do. So, you know, I talked about social media before, and you know, there's so much information out there that you know, and there's some good information out there via social media, and there's also some not so good information. You know, we have influencers like myself on YouTube who share their experiences, also like on Instagram. And we didn't have this stuff years ago, but you know, so when I first got into the hobby, a lot of people like myself learn by reading books, by you know, reading the trade magazines and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts about the information ecosystem today that exists in terms of like there's just so many different things, sources of information. There's so many experts out there, and a lot of times, you know, these so-called experts aren't really experts and potentially could be giving newbies some bad advice. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, you said, I think you kind of.
I answered my own question.
Well.
Is that what I?
You did answer. You did answer your own question. There are a couple things that are happening or that have happened. One is that the technology's gotten a lot better. It's just much easier to take care of a tank. And, you know, if you're a fairly patient person and you can consume a little bit of technical information and you can go into a store that's trusted and like buy some things, you're going to do pretty well. So you don't have to have this backing community. You don't have to read, you know, Julian's book or, you know, you don't have to suck up all this information in order to figure it out. You can listen to influencers. There are influencers that'll say, you know, just do this and it works. And there are a lot of people that have done that, you know, like 3Reef. I mean, that was kind of like the basis of that website. It was like, there were 3 rules, right? And Mr. Saltwater Tank, he just lays it all out there. It's very simple. It's like reefing for dummies. I mean, I hate that kind of moniker, but it's for, hey, I don't even care. I don't even want to know anything. Just tell me how to get the tank up and running. So I think that hides the fact that people aren't really digesting the scientific information that's necessary to reach the higher levels and to really push the hobby forward, which is unfortunate. But at the same time, it brings a lot more people and a lot more money into the hobby, which helps in a lot of other ways because we get more recognition and people know about the hobby and you have more visibility. As far as the social media stuff, outside of the influencers, the individuals, I have a real problem with the social media. I mean, obviously I use social media and we use social media, reefs.com and all the websites, but there's no index. There's nothing there. You know, it's like you want an answer right then and there. And in addition to your answer, you're going to get blasted by like 10 other people for like how stupid you are or like this or that. You know, that's what that experience is like. You can't find an article about something. You find a link to an article, maybe, but more often than not, it's getting some information at a specific point in time. It's not curated content. It's not somebody thought and put a lot of time into researching something and putting all the information together. So I just have a feeling that these hobby-specific communities offer real value and curated content, and people who are interested in talking about that topic, not within a stream of all their other interests, but they're thinking about reef aquariums. They go to a reef site, they start talking to people, not Facebook where, you know, oh, I'm interested in motorcycles and aquariums and, you know, blackjack. And I have to like go through all these different things and like, you know, answer all these different questions or get involved in these things. I think that the communities are always going to have some sort of gravity. They're going to be there. They're going to maintain content. They're going to develop content. And that is, you know, the knowledge and understanding that's going to outlive and outweigh all the social, you know, social media and social interaction that's just kind of fly by night. I mean, that's my opinion. I think the market probably disagrees with me, but from a hobby perspective, you know, we don't have to like be perfect on Facebook. Let's just continue to sort of, you know, entertain ourselves. Maybe it's a closed environment, but I don't know. I'm okay with that.
What about like on Manhattan Reefs? You know, you guys have forums and there's conversations that are going on, and people are, you know, asking for advice, giving advice, and all that sort of thing. How do the moderators, you know, how tough do they police that sort of thing in terms of like if there's blatant misinformation posted, do they are they stepping in to like, you know, say, hey, hold on a second, put a stop sign up there, or is it pretty much you know, you're just trying to like make sure that people are not getting bullied or you know, that sort of thing? But you know, how tough do you guys try to police the misinformation piece of it?
We don't have. There isn't a policy for we must promote good information. It's sort of like the community will suss that out. It'll, enough people will chime in and say, no, you can't, you can't have your specific gravity 10, 18 and expect to keep like just stupid stuff. That being said, the people that moderate Manhattan Reefs and Reefs.com forums are really passionate people. So they get involved in all the conversations. And I don't think that they specifically, they're not wearing their moderator hat when they go into a conversation where there's bad information being passed around. They're just more of like, just a friendly hobbyist just saying, no, but, have you thought about this? Have you tried this? What's your test result for this? Nowhere in the moderator forums or our kind of like, we have some rules written down somewhere. Nowhere does it say we are policing for bad information. It just sort of goes without saying that these people that are willing to put in their time to support a community by policing all the bad behavior, that they do want to help people get their aquariums to run well. So, luckily we've never had to like enforce that or say that to the moderators. They're passionate people.
So our moderator for the live stream, Paul Great Bearded Reef, is actually the president of the Boston Reefer Society, and I had him on the live stream, and we talked about some similar topics. And one thing that I asked him that I'd like to ask you is, in terms of recruiting new members, how do you guys, how do you guys go about doing that in terms of, the youth of the hobby is really the most important aspect of it. So, how do you guys recruit new members no matter what age? And then B, how do you target younger folks?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's really hard. Originally, what we would do was we would go to all the local fish stores, and we would have relationships with the owners and whatnot. And we would put business cards out there and stickers and things to try and get people to go to the website. And people who are members of Manhattan Reefs, if you go into a local fish store and say, hey, is there a Manhattan Reef discount? They get some sort of discount or special. We hope that that's like a, symbiotic relationship with the stores and with the website. Like, we're not selling things online, and we're trying to get people to go into we do support the stores. We try and get people in there. It's hard. It's hard to understand how to get people in this day and age where there aren't really brick and mortar, and there's even less here. The only thing that I can really say about it is that in New York, we've been challenged with the lack of brick and mortar stores forever, and we still manage to have a really good community, and people just kind of, there's this word of mouth sort of thing where when people meet another person who happens to be in the community, that person generally introduces them in some way.
Right.
It's almost like it was we didn't need to do anything. I mean, we did put out business cards and stickers, and and the stores, they do help promote us as well. It's a mutual thing, but we never really had to focus a lot. I mean, I think we do have to do that more than we're doing now. But again, we have a lot of challenges because of COVID. We just do.
Stories Reef, man. Rashid, thanks for that super chat. The comment is, hi, Josh. It's that guy 96 from MR. I don't know if you remember. I don't remember that guy 96, but I do know.
No, yeah.
Everything today is data driven. Ever think about collecting all reefing data and creating a master database?
That is a great question. The answer is yes, yes, and yes. And we've tried to do that with all sorts of stuff. So if you go to reefs.com and type in /fish or /coral or /pests and /invertebrates, that is our database that we have compiled from all of the information on the website. Like, yeah, we go out and work with, like, we went to ORA and we said, can we have all your photos and your care information? We'll put it all in our thing. So we did that. But in general, what we would do is somebody writes something about, oh, how do you keep this kind of starfish? And all that information would be included there. Now, it's not, it's a lot of photos and descriptions. It's not, I wouldn't say it's data driven, but at least it's a guide for people that are trying to understand, okay, what is this coral? How do I identify this sort of thing? So all of that is there. All of the entire website is obviously very well indexed and very well linked. Data beyond that, we tried at one point to capture data from people's controllers, but this was around the time of digital aquatics, digital aquatics and Apex and Neptune and all that. And we had this thing working for 2 controllers, and then one of the controllers went out of business, and then there were like 10 other controllers. So we're trying to get all this data into the website just to have it. And eventually we just, we couldn't maintain that sort of thing. We also have Sanjay's lighting guide, where he was cataloging and describing the performance of bulbs and the ballasts and the reflectors. Yep. So you can put in those 3 variables, and it would compute what the output would be like. Unfortunately, with the advent of LEDs, and really the advent of like these kind of mom and pop LEDs, lots of Chinese and Korean LEDs, and people just building things from home, DIY, which I think is great. We just weren't able to keep up with this sort of stuff. If you can imagine that, not only does it cost money, but you have to get an expert to actually do the performance, the analysis. And Sanjay has a day job as a professor, as well as a whole bunch of other things that he likes to do. So we couldn't exactly say, hey, Sanjay, where's the latest, Radeon came out with Gen 3 X, version 1.1. Like, why haven't you updated it?
Who's got the time?
It's all about, yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit here, Josh. I think this hobby, there's kind of like these related hobbies. I'm really into fishing. It seems like I run into a lot of reef keepers that are into fishing, and other reef keepers are into scuba diving like you are. And in the intro I mentioned that you've been doing it for 30 plus years, I think. So the scuba diving came before the reef keeping hobby for you, and that actually, I went snorkeling on my honeymoon, I think it was, in Hawaii, and that kind of like got me. When I grew up, my father kept fish only tanks, so I was exposed to it at a young age. But when I went snorkeling, it's just seeing all the fish and the corals and all that sort of thing just really got reef keeping on the radar screen for me.
Yeah.
Is that a similar experience for you in terms of the scuba diving?
Yeah, well, I did have like some tanks when I was younger. I mean, I kept turtles and like hermit crabs and things like that, but never, reefing was not an option at the time. First of all, I'll say that if you can pick up scuba diving, it's better than snorkeling. It's much more relaxing. It's much more, you reach this kind of like Zen state where, you're not struggling. You're not struggling at the top of the water with waves going over you and breathing through this tube. You can really relax and just enjoy the visuals, and then people get into photography. Scuba has always just been like just a real passion for me, and luckily I've been able to do it a bit more recently. So this summer, I'm going to be going to the Great Barrier Reef for a week to live on a liveaboard.
Wow.
Which I'm really looking forward to. Last summer, I went to the Red Sea in Egypt, which was really, really great. It was a place I've always wanted to go. Just that biotype of the Antheas, and just the way that they, the reef is like blue and green, and then there's just this school of bright orange red fish that just appear and disappear like in a split second. There's just something about that is just very, very spiritual.
Yeah, you're right, because on the same trip to Hawaii, I also did some scuba diving, and it was crazy. This is probably very atypical, but I think I spent 1 hour, maybe it was, or maybe it was 2 separate 1 hour lessons in the resort swimming pool, getting resort certified, whatever that means. And then there you go. It was like in an open ocean dive, like the next day or something crazy. But unfortunately, we dove near where a river was feeding into the ocean in Hawaii. I think it might have been in Maui. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And so it was all silty and all that stuff. But it was a very strange sensation in terms of like going down, 20, 30 feet or whatever. And I just had like this dry throat, and it was bizarre. And then I did it again off of in the Bahamas. but much shallower water. But it was a pretty cool experience. It's amazing, right? I mean, I've done a lot of snorkel, not a lot of snorkeling. I've snorkeled a handful of times, but it's a really cool experience. So is it just tough to kind of snorkel around and you know, see certain things that maybe you like to have on your personal tank, and no, you can't make that happen?
Yeah, that's yes, definitely. Especially when you're seeing these things that, you know, are they're selling in the hobby for like, you know, $1,000 for this little piece, and you're in front of like a half a mile of it.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't think about the dollars. It's just sort of like it was always. I just want this feeling in my house. You know, I'm not like I don't need that coral. Just like where I'm at mentally right now, on like floating on top of this other world.
Yeah.
Can I bottle this up and put this into my home
Yeah.
so I can get back here when I've had a tough day at work? And that's what the aquariums are doing for people. They're like, you know, they're natural and they have a rhythm and a flow to them, and they're funny and they're cute, and you've got all these cool things going on. It was never, you know, for me, the hobby has never really been about like the money. I mean, I understand the money, and it makes sense. There's a business behind this, and that
Yeah.
I totally support it, because at the end of the day, people that pay $1,000 for that tiny little piece of coral at an economic level, they support the reef more than anybody else in the world. I know that sounds really almost perverse. All these like, you know, animal
Yeah.
rights people, like, just stay off the reef, don't take anything out of the aquarium, out of the reefs. These things grow miles and hundreds of miles in a million directions every single year. If we take care of our planet, the things will keep growing. The bigger problem is taking care of the planet. If we take care of the planet, the corals will be there.
Yep.
People paying $1,000 for a coral, that's actually inevitably, I know it's like a very small portion, but it is really supporting a local community, you know, a local family, or you know, just some country that makes their income, their GDP off of, you know, tourism and reefs. So it isn't people that are just like kind of sitting in the, you know, far removed from the reefs that give a whole bunch of money to reef conservation. I really do think that our hobby prizes or emphasizes reef conservation. Now, we don't do the best job of marketing that and describing that to the industry or to the people outside of the industry. People are like, you take things out of the reef and you put them in your tank. How could that possibly be good for the earth? First of all, it educates people. My kids respect nature and respect the reef and know the animals that are down there and can describe them and have a scientific, you know, they're curious, right? That's why we have zoos and aquariums and things like that. Having a little mini zoo, a little mini aquarium in your home is really an amazing thing to have. You know, again, it's really just back to, I love scuba diving, having it in my home, even if it's a 1 foot cube of it when you swim for miles, it's enough. It's enough.
What's the hope for the Great Barrier Reef trip? I mean, are you gonna like see parts of the reef that are actually right there? I mean, there's parts of that Great Barrier Reef that are struggling
majorly, and it's really, you know, I don't want to be kind of self-centered about it, but I read the news and I'm like, I got to take this trip in, you know, a couple of months, and they're like major bleaching event, because there was I think an El Nino or a La Nina event that Australia has kind of the opposite weather as us, right? So the hot point was in December, and it was way hot. So now everything was like bleached and like a lot of dying. And now when I go, it'll be cooler, a lot cooler. So it'll be technically their winter. So I'll get to see, you know, what has happened. That's not really why I'm going there. I've never been there before. So it's a bit unfortunate that that's one of the reasons. But I mean, to be totally honest, I don't think it's going to be there much longer. It's not going to be a destination for for people that are interested in seeing the reef. It doesn't seem like that's in the cards. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm like, okay, all the reefs are going to die, because going to other places, you see, well, actually, reef life does move. Like if there's a certain temperature that's bad, corals do actually sort of quote unquote migrate, or at least their eggs move around and they move into cooler areas. Unfortunately, some of the cooler areas are slightly out of the range of the sun, so they have less ability to do photosynthesis. It's too short a period for any sort of like kind of natural evolution, but there are corals that do indicate that they have better ability to withstand temperatures. Like they have more kind of natural sunscreen within them. So what we're going to, unfortunately, I think what we're going to see is that we're going to lose some reefs, and hopefully we'll spend a lot of time and money figuring out what's working in other areas and potentially reseed. It's horrible to even say that you have to do something like that. But, looking at like what's going on in Florida, these conservation efforts where they kind of grow them in certain areas and then like move them back to areas that seem to be affected. It's what we're going to have to do. Otherwise, we're going to lose the reefs. We're going to lose the fish stock. And that is just going to go right up the food chain. All of a sudden, you're not going to have fish. You're not going to have sushi. You're not going to have anything like this. It's not like the reef is just, little tiny reef fish. Those little reef fish are being eaten by the fish that we're eating. So,
it's an interesting situation. On July 21st, I'm going to have the folks from the Living Coral Biobank on the show, and that's
cool.
Dean Miller and Dr. Charlie. Hopefully, Dr. Charlie Vernon will be on the show, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about what they're doing to help preserve the reefs around there. It's a big problem, and
that's. So I have one other comment on that, and Charlie and everybody else will probably, in the scientific community, will probably freak out. But I've said this to friends and certainly to Randy and other people in the community many, many times. But this hobby, it does really good things. And the fact that we're learning so much about coral biology and the sciences, and we are able to, in some way, maintain these very particular and finicky animals outside of their natural environment. This idea of like, well, could we create an arc of some kind of, keep the animals out of the dangerous areas, which could potentially be the ocean. And all of a sudden the hobby has the ability to, I don't want to say rescue, but just provide some, ongoing, like, hey, I'm farming this livestock. Here it is. You can test things on it. And maybe we could use this to reseed reefs in the future. It's a big stretch, but I do think the hobby is really more aligned with that sort of notion and the scientists than other parts of the world we live in.
A couple of comments about this. Ellery, I like this comment. Maybe we should be banking more of our local corals by fragging them and spreading them out to more advanced reefers. Coral banking is something that is always a really good idea. If you have a fellow reef keeper that's got, a similar system or big stick head and what have you, in case something happens to your tank, it's great to be able to bank corals so you can always, withdraw from that bank if need be. So I think if more people did that, that would be a really cool thing. And then Paul was saying here, Great Bearded Reef, just watched a video about Florida. It was nice to see and hear that the scientists and other professionals are recognizing the hobbyists these days.
Yeah. Well, there's one caveat, and that is that if we are banking all these things, we're really not protecting all of the brown corals. So all these brown corals will not be like, if we do, arc these corals and have to replant these corals, take them out of people's aquariums and put them back, we're only going to probably reseed the limited edition cherry things. We'll never put back the brown ones because nobody keeps brown corals anymore.
Well, you get the brown corals, and if you know what you're doing, you color them up, right?
You make them blue. You make them purple.
Yeah. All right, so Josh, you're you're also a hobbyist, right? Because behind you throughout the whole stream, we've had this fish tank behind you. How big is that tank, and what's in there?
It's I think a 24-gallon. Where I'm sitting, I used to have a 130-gallon all SPS tank, which kept me busy. And
that you're an apartment in New York City.
Yeah, I'm in Manhattan. I'm near Union Square. So yeah, it's a little tough. But
how were you able to get the large tank in the apartment? How did you manage that one? Not necessarily the move in, but how'd you get the folks that run the apartment building to agree to have so much water?
Oh, I probably got lucky that we installed it when no one was looking. Maybe just they put it in the elevator and nobody saw it. Until much later, I didn't really have an issue. What proved to be my downfall, the first of the downfall of the tank, was that there was a condensation line just right over here that used to be for an air conditioner. And I had an automatic water change system that was hooked into the RODI in the kitchen and would do a 1-gallon water change automatically up to 15 gallons whenever I wanted. So I could basically you eliminate the need to dose, you eliminate the need to do major water changes, you eliminate all this, all these other things just by consistent small water changes. The problem is that the RODI, the waistline water did not really, those things that they're supposed to cut it off, when it's off and not apply any pressure through the whole system. They're a bit buggy in general. I've tried a lot of them and they're kind of buggy. And anyhow, the wastewater was going down and it's supposed to go down through this condensation pipe, but everyone has this condensation pipe and there are other air conditioners. And when it got to the ground floor, it hit inside of the pipe, it hit the bottom of the pipe and then bounced up and splashed inside of the pipe. But the pipe has a tiny little hole. So down on the ground floor, 3 floors beneath me, water was coming out. And they were like, why is this water coming out? And for a while, nobody knew, which was great for me. But eventually that clued them in, hey, there's all this water up in this tank. And I had a couple of other, you have floods, you have overflows.
It happens.
It happens, Thank God for, what do they call it? A bathtub, right? That inside of the tank where the sump is, you put in a pool liner.
Yeah.
And there were a couple times where that pool liner
saved the day.
Saved me.
Yeah.
So I was told at a certain point, I was having a lot of issues with the tank at the time, and I was busy, so I was planning on kind of shutting it down. Around the same time, they were like, we don't really like this thing up there. So I shut it down. I didn't have anything for a while. And then I just decided that, I had such a good time with the clownfish breeding, because I had 2 clowns in there that were breeding, that I wanted to do it with my kids again. So I got it's a 24-gallon all-in-one tank.
I'm showing the tile with the
oh yeah, with the eggs. Yeah, so I was breeding clownfish for a while, which was a lot of fun. We were breeding just regular ocellaris, and I was selling them, not for making money, but just
supporting
you have 400 fish, you got to get rid of them. So I would take them to Manhattan Aquariums, which I just got to say they're a great store in New York City. Joe and his team, it's a great store. They do great service. They service all of the major, commercial tanks or places that are in offices and whatnot. So I just want to mention them. And anyhow, so I sold them a bunch of fish, and now I'm back at it again. I have these 2 fish in there. One is a Sanjay black photon. The other one, I think it's a Wyoming white or a snowflake or something. Cool. Both of which I got from Randy, and I also got a very small anemone at the time, which is now, you can't really see it, but the entire right side of the tank is just this massive pink kind of rainbow anemone, which is really beautiful. And in the past few months, the clownfish have finally, after 2 years, have finally discovered it. So hopefully some eggs are in the future, and then that will then cause this table behind me to be covered with a whole bunch of little 1 and 2 gallon tanks from Petco, as I do the rotifers and the brine and all that stuff. That's really, if you'd never done that before, that is a part of the hobby that is just incredibly rewarding. So if your clownfish are laying eggs, raising clownfish is not that difficult. You do need to be prepared, and you do need to read a lot. But that's another like part of the hobby that, like, if people did that, they would just be, like, mentally rewarding. It's incredible.
So, I've always we might have talked about this before the stream. I don't think we were talking about it on the stream, but so yeah, I have always had clownfish. They've laid eggs in my reef tanks, and larger reef tanks, and sometimes it's like impossible to get them out because they're attached to a rock, or sometimes they're in the corner of the tank and all that sort of thing. And once they hatch in a reef tank, it's like it's done, right? There's nothing you can do about it. So you're not raising them in that 25-gallon tank.
No.
You're basically getting them to spawn, lay eggs, what have you, in like a little flower pot type of thing, or some sort of tile,
exactly. Well,
and something where you can transfer that tile or flower pot out of the tank into something else.
Exactly. So you just get them to lay eggs comfortably. So they'll lay them in the same spot every X number of days. And then once they're doing that, you take some, reef glue or putty, and you get like a tile, like just a ceramic tile. And people even sell like specialized kind of frag plugs that are, kind of, I don't know, I guess the clownfish like them. And you glue it right in that place. And, the first couple of weeks, they're probably not going to lay the eggs in that spot anymore. But then they will. They will just like go back to habit, and they'll lay it like, it's almost like they know they're going to lay it like right in the middle of that tile if you put it in the right spot. And then you have to time how long it is from when they lay the eggs to when the eggs hatch. The eggs will hatch overnight. You need to take the tile out on that night before they hatch, put it into another dedicated tank with the same tank water, and you very gently aerate it. And then the eggs will hatch in that tank. You have to have your rotifers ready, and then you have to have more rotifers. They eat a lot of them, and then brine shrimp, and baby newly hatched brine shrimp. And then you have to have typically, your reef nutrition TDO, A, the little tiny little things, and then you go to B, and it's a whole process. You can't do it in the tank. There's no way. Right. The fish go over the overflow. The parents eat them. Crabs eat them. There's no way. So you have to be really, in tune with it.
So how long of a process is it? I mean, in terms of like, the when they're like fry, right? I mean, when they're just so small and barely visible to the naked eye or something like that. I mean, how much work are you like? Is this like several times a day where you've got to like be feeding them the rotifers and what have you? I mean, how intense is it?
No, the rotifers. If you have enough rotifers in there, and you're putting in a little bit of some algae, right? You're putting in some green water. The rotifers are eating the green water and reproducing, and they're doing that in a bucket as well. So what you do is you kind of sieve out you put through a filter that rotifer water, and then put the rotifers into the tank. You only have to do that really once a day. I mean,
no, that's not bad.
From the eggs that I hatched, my success rate, I've had up to 400 fish hatch, and then made to a saleable point, maybe 300 in one batch. It's a lot, but to a saleable point is probably like 6 months. I mean, you really need them to be like big enough to go into like kind of a store, a commercial aquarium. So they need to be big enough, and they need to be, obviously eating very well, and it takes a while to grow them out. It definitely does.
Yeah, it is definitely a lot of work, and it's a lot, in terms of the fish. Have you ever thought about getting into the whole designer thing in terms of pairing different clownfish, or just getting a couple of really cool designer clownfish and trying to get them to mate?
I have. That really, in my opinion, requires a basement, which I do not have. So I can't. In order to do that, look, if you get 2 designer clownfish, it could take them years to start laying eggs. Yeah. So if you're really into reproducing clownfish and, look at like MBI and all that for all that information, you typically have like a whole bunch of mated pairs, and you're just kind of waiting on which ones are going to start doing it at whatever particular time. So you've got like maybe, 5 to 10 tanks, and maybe they're all plumbed together, maybe not, whatever. But I don't have, this is just like, if they happen to do this in this little spot in here, like I know how to raise them over there. I don't have a whole dedicated thing. And then once the raising them is done, I'll shut that whole thing down and I'll get my dining room table back. But you know, if you don't live in the city, be very appreciative of your basement.
Yes, I feel very fortunate to have a big basement for all of my tanks. It's kind of like my spot, and my wife rarely comes down here, so it definitely it is an advantage of being a house. But I also kept reef tanks in the city when I used to live in the city, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, you mentioned New World Aquarium at the beginning, and I always used to like look forward to like hopping on the subway, you know, and going all the way down to going down to Greenwich Village and checking out New World Aquarium. I don't know.
Yeah, there were two stores. There was New World Aquarium, and then there was another little one across the street that was down in the basement. And I mean, that was kind of like, I don't want to say the golden age of you know, reefing there, but that was like, those were the two spots. And then the little one closed, and New World Aquarium moved up to 40th Street, and then eventually closed. And then, you know, Joe Cap originally was just in service business. And he used to have, like, it wasn't a store. It was like you go up into like this warehouse room with like no windows, but he had all these tanks in there because he needed livestock in order to stock his service business.
Right.
So you would go in there and he would just have all these, like, you know, hammer corals and frog spawn, like all the stuff to, like, you know, inventory for his business. And then, you know, thankfully he eventually opened up the store, which I think is great. It's the only store in Manhattan right now. I mean, there are other little places that have a little salt water, but there's nothing like that. So hats off to him for, you know, kind of being the rock around here for aquariums for a while.
Yep. So Ellery's saying there's a few stores in Queens. When I last visited my parents before COVID. Yeah, I think like in
I'm just talking about Manhattan. There's
Queens,
definitely Queens has always had good places. Brooklyn has always had good places.
You got Kenny on Staten Island.
They're still there. I will. Yeah, Kenny, definitely. If you can visit Kenny. If you're curious about the stores, somebody was asking before about, like, you know, the Reefs database and everything. On the website, there's also the map of all the stores, and there's also an app. We have an iOS and an Android app that allow you to, like, just, you know, use GPS or put in your zip code, and you can find all the stores. And it's not just for New York. Like, wherever you are, California, anywhere really in the globe, we've tried to get all the stores in there. Admittedly, there's stores that have closed that are still listed in there. There's a little button you push that, like, will say, hey, report the store closed or update the store. But for anyone who's trying to find stores in their region, please check out the Reefs app. Go into, you know, the App Store and just search for Reefs, and it's free to download, and you can find all the stores that are local to you.
So, Josh, what's the future hold in terms of Reefs.com, Advanced Aquarist, and Manhattan Reefs? Any things you guys have in the pipeline, either one of those entities?
Yeah, well, we're working. We're doing a lot of cool stuff in the app for sure right now. We're doing a lot of cool stuff around these kind of in between swaps and mail order, like a live sale, group buy. We're trying to build that into the technology so people can do that sort of stuff much easier. We're trying to get more content. I mean, you know, in the age of the influencer, you have podcasts and video casts like this one, which are great, and you get to, you know, really meet the people.
Yeah.
You experience their personality a bit, but it isn't really the same as an article. So I don't know if people are done with reading for human history. We're going to continue to put out good content. We're gonna do more events. I mean, the swaps are coming back. I just don't have a date for them. I can't announce it. There's no way that we're not going to do another swap. We just got to figure out when and where. So yeah, that's it. And also, you know, we do go to Reefapalooza and to MACDA and all that. We typically have a booth or a table or something like a party or something there. So hopefully we can see you there as well.
Yeah, I'm going to be at Reefapalooza in New York again this June. So perhaps I'll see you guys there.
Absolutely, we'll be there.
All right, man. Josh, any final words before we sign off tonight?
I just wanted to thank you, you know, just for the opportunity to, you know, to talk to you, and The hobby, it's different, but I'm as passionate about it as I ever have been. It's different. The science is cool. The technology is cool. These tanks run themselves a lot better, which means that a lot more people can get involved in this hobby. So everybody should just kind of think on that for a little bit. People don't always get along so well. Everyone's got kind of, especially in this day and age, everyone's a little sensitive. So when you meet someone that's in the hobby and meet someone that's a reefer, they're your buddy. That's your kindred spirit, So do your best to just kind of, without clubs, without events, build your own community. Find a couple friends, do little swaps, get a couple beers, whatever you got to do, and just have fun with it. Take it easy. Things about your tank can be stressful. Losing animals is stressful. Tank crashes are stressful. Technology and costs are stressful. Remember, this is supposed to be a hobby. It's supposed to relax you. If it's not doing that, then you're doing something wrong. And fix that, because this is a very rewarding hobby in many ways. So.
It is. There's a lot of nuances to this hobby, and there's a lot of ups and downs. And you gotta just be, I've always found you gotta be a very patient person. And I've talked about this before, but when you've had, when you have these, issues with the tank, it really does impact your, the way you feel and your demeanor and all that stuff. It's like depressing, but
your whole zen is off. You're completely,
but there are just so many awesome rewards to this hobby. So I completely agree with that message, Josh. Oh, Rob upstate New York, thanks, man, for the for the super chat comment. Is thanks, guys, appreciate it. Filipino reefer, see you in Rappin, New York for sure.
Definitely.
All right, Josh, man. So that's gonna do it for the show. I really want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight, and I also want to thank both Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine for supporting and sponsoring the show, and also for all you folks out there that tuned in. And I appreciate the super chats for sure. Finally, a big thank you to Paul, Great Bearded Reef, the moderator. Also want to let you know that all episodes of Rappin with ReefBum are now available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. My next live stream, this is going to be a good one, next Thursday, May 19th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I got Jake Adams back on the show, so I'm sure Jake's going to have a lot to say. And
he's the man.
Could be a marathon session for sure. But anyway, if you want to check out the full upcoming schedule for guests on Rappin with ReefBum, visit reefbum.com and check out the YouTube section. Until then, be safe and be well.